You remember what we were told about January 6th, January 6th, that it was an insurrection, the worst attack ever on our sacred democracy. Ironically, January 6th was not even the worst attack on our democracy of that year. That would, of course, go to BLM, which burned federal buildings and killed dozens of people, torched cities across the country. What happened on January 6th is a little bit confusing because there were some people who were creating a little bit of chaos. There were other people who were being allowed into the U.S. Capitol by the Capitol Police. There were other people like Nancy Pelosi who said that it was her fault that she did not call in law enforcement assets to protect the Capitol, that it was her, she took responsibility in a documentary made by her daughter. And then there was the FBI, which said that it had nothing to do with January 6th. Then we found out some years later, okay, well, the FBI had a few dozen people there. Some assets, but even the assets who were there, they were just there of their own volition. They just coincidentally happened to be at the Capitol. That's what we were told. And now we find out, the FBI acknowledges that it had some more people, not just a few more people, 275 plainclothes agents in the crowds on January 6th. We found that out. What are we at? We're almost 5 years now after we were starting to ask about FBI involvement. This is thanks to reporting from The Blaze. Almost 5 years later, we're finally learning that the story we were told from the FBI was false. Now, the FBI maintains the plainclothes agents went in just to keep the peace. They didn't instigate any trouble. Even when you saw these very suspicious videos of people, multiple people, who were not arrested, who were not imprisoned for their actions on January 6th, urging people to go into the Capitol. Multiple people of different ages. Ray Epps was a famous case of this. Go in, you got to go into the Capitol. And people would respond to him and say, no, we're not going to do that. You're a Fed. And then mysteriously, they arrest, Midwestern grannies for taking selfies in the rotunda. They throw them in solitary. But these guys who incited mobs to go into the Capitol on January, they get off without being arrested, without being harassed at all. Very, very strange. Now, at least, though, the FBI is saying, okay, we had hundreds of people there blending in, but they weren't doing anything nefarious. And the problem is that could be true. But the fact that the FBI has now lied to us for almost 5 years means we have no reason to believe that that's true. We have a real credibility problem with federal agencies. It's not that all of a sudden I became an expert on vaccines. That's not why I'm skeptical of some vaccines now. It's not because I got some degree in epidemiology. It's because the public health officials who I was told to trust lied to me specifically about the COVID vaccine. And so as a result, I can no longer trust them, at least on the topic of vaccines. That's why people have stopped trusting our federal institutions. It's not their fault. The epistemological crisis, using a lot of fancy E words, epidemiological, epistemological, but on the crisis of how do we even know things at all, it's really not the fault of the rubes and the hoi polloi and all of us out here who don't have fancy degrees. It's the fault of the experts who lied to us. When we don't have a ton of faith in our federal bureaucrats, that's not our fault. Blame the FBI, which lied to us for almost 5 years. Which is why it is so important to hold corrupt FBI officials accountable. That was a great clip. Now stop, ring the bell, subscribe. We'll see you next time.